So today I am going to talk about regulation of respiration. So before we start, first of all, broadly we divide the regulation of respiration into two main regulatory mechanisms. One is voluntary and the second one is involuntary. The involuntary means it is also called as automatic regulation. Okay, so we'll see that. So voluntary regulation means the regulatory mechanism is by our will. So that is done by the corticospinal tract. This system, corticospinal tract, will bypass the involuntary system and it will reach to the thoracic muscles or the muscles of respiration, muscles of inspiration and expiration, along with the muscles of pharynx and larynx, and it will control the respiration during speech, during singing, during breath holding, and etc. So this is a voluntary regulation of respiration. Second one is involuntary regulation of respiration, that is also called as automatic regulation of respiration, which is further divided into two main mechanisms, that is neural mechanism and chemical mechanism. Now the neural mechanism, it again have two main divisions. First is by the respiratory system and the other one is by the reflexes. Okay, so the respiratory system, the respiratory centers which controls the neural regulation are medullary center and the pontine center, and the chemical system which controls the respiration is by central chemoreceptor and by the peripheral chemoreceptors. We'll see one by one all the factors or all the divisions. So first of all, the most important, that is the respiratory center which controls the respiration. So in medulla there are two groups of neurons which will control the respiration. These neurons are grouped into dorsal group neurons and ventral group neurons. They are also called as DRG and VRG, that is dorsal respiratory group of neurons and ventral respiratory group of neurons. Now dorsal respiratory group of neuron, it consists of inspiratory neurons. It have only one type of neurons that are called as inspiratory neurons. Now this dorsal group of neuron is situated in the nucleus tractus solitarius. Now nucleus tractus solitarius will take the afferents from 9th nerve and 10th nerve. The ventral group of neuron, it consists of both inspiratory as well as expiratory group of neurons, types of neurons. Okay, so it has both types of neurons, inspiratory neurons and expiratory neurons. Now this both dorsal as well as ventral group, they also have one more type of neuron, that is called as interneurons. So these two neurons, they are connected to each other, this group of neurons, by interneurons. So there will be always communication between ventral group of neurons and dorsal group of neurons. So this is regarding the medullary system. Then we have the pontine respiratory center. The pontine respiratory center is further having two main parts, that is pneumotaxic center and apneustic center. Okay, we'll see in details about this. First of all, before I start, let us talk about neurons. Okay, so respiratory system, the neurons are, as I told you, there are two types of neurons. One is inspiratory neuron and the other one is expiratory neuron. Now the inspiratory neuron, it is responsible for inspiration, right? Now inspiration is done by the muscles of inspiration, which are diaphragm and external intercostal muscle. Now these inspiratory neurons, they have a stimulatory effect on the spinal nerves which supplies the muscles of inspiration, and they will cause contraction of diaphragm and external intercostal and will lead to the inspiration. Same way, the expiratory neurons, they will have a stimulatory effect on muscles of expiration, and which is internal intercostal, and it will be responsible for expiration. But normally the expiration, that is a quiet expiration, is a passive process. Okay, so this is because of elastic recoil of the lungs and chest wall after inspiration. So usually the expiratory neurons are not activated. Only during forceful expiration there will be stimulation of expiratory neurons. Okay, so when the inspiratory neurons are stimulated, the expiratory neurons are inhibited. So this is called as reciprocal inhibition. This is called as reciprocal inhibition. So in regulation of respiration, there are two types of neurons: inspiratory neurons, expiratory neurons. Okay, as we saw, the DRG, it is consisting only of inspiratory neurons, but the VRG, it is consisting of both inspiratory as well as expiratory neuron. Okay, so these neurons, how they work: the inspiratory neurons, they will stimulate the spinal nerves, which will supply the muscles of inspiration, diaphragm and external intercostal, will cause inspiration. The expiratory neurons, they will stimulate the muscles of expiration, will cause contraction of external intercostal and will cause expiration. Okay, the stimulation of expiratory muscles occurs only during a forceful expiration. Otherwise, it is a passive process, which is because of the elastic recoil of the lung and the chest wall. Now, before we start with the regulation of respiration, let us know how there is generation of respiration, the mechanism of generation of respiration. Okay, so mechanism of generation of respiration. Okay, so as there is a pacemaker in the heart, there is one more pacemaker that is present in the lung. Now this pacemaker is called as pre-Böttger complex. This pre-Böttger complex, it is present inside the medulla, in the ventral part of the medulla. Okay, this is a pre-Böttger complex. This responsible for inspiratory ramp signals. So this pacemaker complex along with DRG is also called as central process generator. It will generate the signals, which signals are called as inspiratory ramp signals. Now why it is called as ramp signals? So if you plot a graph of action potential which is passing through the inspiratory neurons on y-axis and a duration on x-axis, you will get a graph like this. So what this pacemaker complex will do is it will send the signals to the inspiratory neurons, which will be very weak, slow, and it will last for 2 seconds only. Okay, so this is an x-axis showing time, this is an action potential. It is gradually increasing. The action potential generated in the inspiratory neurons is gradually increasing. It means it is slow and it will go up to 2 seconds. After that, there will be abrupt stoppage of impulses coming. Okay, and this stoppage will be for 3 seconds. So for 2 seconds there will be action potential, and for next 3 seconds there will be stoppage. So this is the time which is taken for the elastic recoil of lung and chest wall. So if you see, the impulse is rising slowly like a ramp. So that is why it is called as a ramp signal. So this slow rising of action potential in the inspiratory neuron will cause slow lung filling, which will be responsible for prevention of inspiratory gasp. Okay, and the duration of this abrupt stoppage will be finding out your duration of expiration. Okay, so this is a passive process of expiration, which will be again followed by a ramp signal for 2 seconds, which is again followed by abrupt stoppage for next 3 seconds. So this is how there is generation of ramp signals in the inspiratory neurons by the central process generator. Okay, now this ramp signal is having regulatory mechanism by its two qualities. First is finding out the rate at which the ramp signal is generated, means how fast the signal is coming. And the second one is by stoppage point, finding out the stoppage point. This stoppage point will control the rate of respiration. Okay, earlier is the stoppage point, rate will be more, so there will be rapid breathing. Okay, so if there is rapid breathing, the respiratory rate is increased, and there is decrease in duration of inspiration and expiration. Okay, so this stoppage point is very important This is called as switch off point. Okay, this switch off point will define the hypoventilation, hyperventilation, and it will regulate the respiratory rate by finding out the ramp signal duration. Okay, so this is important for next, that is spontaneous control of respiration on respiratory centers.